Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the real United States. And bienvenidos a mis amigos de países hispánicos. We are here in what is probably one of the most unknown, most esoteric monuments in the entire city of Washington, D.C. This is the Cuban Friendship Urn, sometimes referred to as the USS Maine Memorial, and I'll explain why in a minute. Now, we thought in light of the recent warming of relations between the United States and the nation of Cuba, we would finally bring you here for this episode because it has some pretty historic significance. Now, this monument was originally made in Cuba and sat on top of a large marble column in Havana. And it was in honor of the men who had died aboard the USS Maine in 1898, just prior to the beginning of the Spanish-American War, when we had sent the Maine to protect U.S. interests in Cuba during Cuba's war for independence from Spain. In 1926, a hurricane came through and it knocked over the column and destroyed it, but the urn was rescued and repaired as well as it could be, and at that time was given to President Calvin Coolidge and the American people and became the Cuban-American Friendship Urn. Again, this was because of our acts in 1898, and that's why the Cuban people at that time felt this great friendship and great gratitude for our acts in their war for independence. Well, this 7-foot structure came here, as I said, in 1926, and was later placed in front of the Cuban embassy on 16th Street Northwest at the time. Well, in 1959, the Cuban government under Batista fell to Fidel Castro, and during this period of time, relations deteriorated between the United States and Cuba and completely fell apart to the point where we eventually had sanctions against them. There was no travel between the two nations. And this urn, this monument to our friendship, disappeared. Nobody's quite sure where, whether it was in a warehouse, whether it had been stolen. They're not even certain exactly where it was found, but it was eventually found. And it was then returned here, I believe in the 1990s, and is set here ever since as a symbol of the friendship between our nations. Well, now, during this period when they have finally announced just this past week that there will be an embassy of Cuba here in Washington, D.C. in the United States, and the United States will have an embassy in Havana in the very near future, one can't help but wonder if this monument will now be displaced, moved back in front of the new Cuban embassy. So it'll be interesting to see if that actually happens. But the United States and Cuba actually, for most of our history, were very close. We were allies in the Spanish-American War. We had a lot of trade. There was a lot of tourism. And then for most of my lifetime, well, actually all of my lifetime, because literally this happened the year I was born, Cuban-American relationships went away. During the Cold War, it was a horrible time, but this monument endured to the relationships that can remain between governments, between people, because let's face it, most of us just want to get through the day. We want to have our families, have our lives, do our jobs, have a little security. And what happens between governments affects us, but we're largely not a party to it. So it'll be interesting to see what the future of the Cuban-American Friendship Urn really is. Now, I'm going to put on the screen here what these two plaques say, and hopefully the English translations. They're very beautiful verbiage. These are solid bronze plaques. You can see on this that over the years, probably largely because of the hurricane, that the marble that this was carved from was damaged, and they've done the best they could to go ahead and patch that and bring it back to its original shape. Now, they tell me this is a 7-foot tall monument, but even when I'm standing up here on the platen, it certainly seems like it's probably closer to 10 because I'm 6 foot tall. Now, you'll notice that there's an eagle with the shield and the arrows and the olive branch near the top. I'm going to wrap around here. I'm going to bring you around and show you on the back that there are two human figures that are reaching across over a depiction of the Maine, touching hands. It's symbolic of the two nations joining in their efforts in the world. And it's really quite a lovely, lovely carving, and I'm glad that they've preserved this. Now we're down here right across from East Potomac Park. We're literally 75 or 80 feet from the Potomac River, right next to the expressway. I'm sorry about the ambient noise, but again, this is probably one of the least known, one of the most obscure monuments here in Washington, D.C., but I can't help but wonder if with the warming of relationships between our countries, if this might not become something that you see in the national or international news in the coming year or the next couple of years. So we're going to try and switch hands with the camera, and I'm going to show you the back side of the urn. So Bev's going to hand the camera off to me, and that's because I'm a little bit taller than she is. Well, actually, I'm quite a bit taller than she is. And I'd like to bring you around here and show you these figures that are carved on the side of the urn. And as I said, you'll notice that there is a depiction of the USS Maine here. And at the top, the hands reaching across and holding hands in the middle. Symbolically quite a beautiful thing. And the other figure on the other side of that depiction. Now we've taken some stills of the placards, the bronze placards that are on this. I will try and insert those into the video here. And you come down here to the Maine dedication placard. So I'm going to hand the camera back off to Beverly. And hopefully she can back up without falling. Because there are some small steps here. So myself, having lived through the Cold War, I'm glad to see it's over. As a child, for Beverly and I, these were very horrific times. We were trained in duck and cover, which was something where in school you'd go and you'd hide in the hallway and cover your eyes and your head in case there was an incursion or a battle if we were attacked. It was a horrible time, a horrible thing to have to live through for a child. So I'm glad to see that it's over or coming to an end, and that relations are relaxing, they're calming down. Now I'm sure many people actually are still not happy about this. And some people, like myself, are quite happy to see that it's happening. So go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section below. Let us know what you feel about the warming of relationships between the United States and Cuba and the establishment of embassies and diplomatic relations between the two countries. I'd love to hear what everybody has to say about that. I'd like to thank you for joining us here on The Real United States. I hope you've enjoyed this visit to the Cuban-American Friendship Urn. And I hope that if you haven't already, you'll pick subscribe. Come along for the adventure. We love having everybody with us. Leave a question, leave a comment. I try to get back to everybody I can. And as always, thank you for watching.